So, Chelsea, another topic that comes up quite often is being an ally. And, I'd really love to understand from your perspective, what is an ally as it relates to disability inclusion? And then how can you become an ally?
I love this because I really identify as being an ally. When you have kids with disabilities, you grow up being an advocate for them. But what's more important as they come into their own understanding of who they are is advocating with. And I think that's one of the key differences in allyship. You have to recognize that you are not a person in the case that I'm talking about living with autism in your body. That is not your experience. And so to try to tell people what they should do for people on the autism spectrum doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But making sure that, if that's someone that you understand, you could be an ally for them. You can help amplify their voice. You can help pass the mic. And if it's not a voice, because we know, for example, that many people with autism struggle with communication, that can be a hallmark for them. Find out other ways that they can authentically show up and be themselves. What can they contribute to the conversation without even having to say the words at all? One of the things that we talk about a lot with educators, for example, is being Sherlock in whatever situation you're in. Looking for the kind of cues in the environment, the cues in behavior that might signal to you that somebody with a disability, particularly an invisible disability like autism, might be struggling. So, kind of going back to some of the examples before of noise and light or smell, all of that kind of sensory input can be received differently by someone with autism. So, then again, becoming curious and asking a question. I'm noticing in you, and I'm noticing this because I'm close to you, I know you, I have a working relationship with you, that when so-and-so walks past the door with their lunch, you look distracted. Can you explain that a little bit better to me? So that's being an ally, kind of helping people identify that. It is a really personal example for me with my son. He works at a local furniture store, and it's been neat to be an ally for him in that situation because he came up during this stage that we call transition in the education environment. So transition begins at age 16 for students with disabilities, carries through until they're 21 years old. And that's also kind of part of that project search that Juan Banda was talking about, that Freighter is involved in. So that is in that transition space, helping these students move from the kind of support that they got in high school to the kind of support that they would have to ask for and access when they're in a working situation. So this helps them in that transition space. So my son was one of these clients of DVR, the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, and was able to have a work experience with this furniture store. And the way this worked out for me as an ally perspective is he wasn't really sure, my son wasn't really sure what employment even meant. So being able to come with him to his interview, rephrase questions if I needed to for language that he could understand. And of course, this has to be done with the permission of the person with the disability, right? So you don't just have a parent force their way in to a situation if that person feels perfectly competent and confident to be able to address, whatever needed addressing. But I was able to kind of help Justice formulate some questions. Asking questions was hard for him. And as I looked at the environment he was going to work in, I said, what do you think is going to be helpful here? You're going to be operating this cardboard baling machine, for example. And he did have a job coach that was with him for those first few weeks to be able to do those kinds of things. And one of her jobs as being the job coach was looking at that machine and going, okay, there's a process here. There are very specific steps to this process. Let's create a visual support that we're going to put right on this machine, which guess what was great for everyone, to remind you of the steps you need to take to make this machine work properly and safely. So being an ally can be like that sometimes. Being a parent, especially when a student is in that transition space, learning how to go from maybe having an educational assistant in the room with them all the time to having to understand what kind of accommodations you're going to need in a workforce situation. So I welcome people to not try to be the voice for someone with a disability, but to amplify their voice and help others understand better how that person might be experiencing something different in that workspace than others might.
Yeah, and that was great, Chelsea, kind of breaking down when we use the term ally, what does that mean? How does that look, in different scenarios? So thank you.